Members of the court, welcome back to my courtroom, my La Casa del Amor, my little home away from home, if you will. This here's the Tactical Verdict, the channel where we judge games based on their combat, and their combat alone. Story? Methinks I'll peruse George Washington's manuscripts instead. Music? Well, I do have a burned copy of Beethoven's 7th Symphony in my horse and carriage, so I think I'm doing just fine, wouldn't you say? Art? Well, we have green eggs and ham at home, ladies and gentlemen. We have green eggs and ham at home. Animation? Animate this phallus, Doris. Here's the Tactical Verdict rating scale. At the bottom, tactically weak. These games' combat mechanics are like being born with no limbs. Nobody wants to look at it. Tactically meek. These games' combat systems are like eating ice cream in 100-degree weather. Delicious at first, but once it melts, quite disappointing. And then we have the tactical treat. These games' combat systems are like eating a 4-layer cake. It feels naughty, but oh so good. And then we have the tactical feast. These games will slap you on the ass and tell you did a good job, and you'll be back for more, you little deviant. And by tomorrow, you'll be back for some of those sweet, sweet combat mechanics. I know you can't resist. On trial today is Shinobi, the Art of Vengeance's combat mechanics. I'll pass it over to our defense attorney to make his case. But by God, make it quick. I'm hungry. I need a Slim Jim. Court adjourned.
Maybe I too could be ninja. I want to be ninja. I want to be ninja.
First, let's talk about the 3 types of damage in this game. First, there's health, which is self-explanatory. Everybody knows this, the red bar on top of the enemy's head, you whack it until it goes down to 0, and they're dead. Second is armor, which, side note, is the most annoying one to deal with by far, because you cannot juggle an enemy as long as they have armor, so this can become quite annoying when this game is all about doing combos, which you can still execute on the armored enemies, you just can't juggle them and kind of stun lock them into your combo. Now, armor is best dealt with through charged attacks, but this is the slowest route. You can land this, the game's not that hard. I don't believe anyone thinks this game is hard, because it is not. But if you're like me and you want to style on enemies 24/7, armor is the one thing that gets in the way. And so while a charged heavy attack is a very effective option, I like using other heavy attacks and or abilities that directly do high damage to enemy armor. But if you can land an attack without getting hit, the charge attack is the way to go. The best time to use the charge attack, in my opinion, is when enemies are first spawning on the screen. You can preemptively charge up that heavy attack and get a beautiful hit off if you line it up right. One other thing to note about armor is that the execution meter does not build while enemies have armor, so this is also why it's important to get that off as fast as you can. And that leads us into the next damage type, the execution damage type. In my opinion, the execution meter is by far the most useful damage type, as it allows you to insta-kill enemies, and the more enemies that are in this state before you execute, the greater the rewards, which is really useful. So if you can line up like 3 or 4 enemies on the screen, all in this execution state, and then you pop the execution, you're going to get more gold, health, and kunai refills. So if you do happen to be struggling in some fights, because there are some hard fights in this game, especially with the Anku rifts. So if you're looking to stay in the fight longer and not have to go back to the checkpoint, this is your best option, is setting up those insta-kills.
You guys, you know what? I might do it. I might be a ninja soon. I gonna be ninja.
Now, what are the tools that our protagonist Joe Musashi has in his toolbox? Well, for his primary weapon, Joe wields a katana, which can execute light and heavy attacks. And when unlocking abilities that players can purchase in the shop as they progress through the game, can string attacks together to perform combos, where each ability used utilizes a 3-star system that determines the damage dealt to health, armor, and execution meters. Aside from the katana, Joe Musashi's secondary weapon is his kunai, which is a useful long-ranged weapon that is great for building up the execution meter and getting enemies in that insta-kill status. And it also deals fairly good damage to enemies that only have a health bar and no armor. In addition to the katana and the kunai, Joe Musashi can also equip up to 4 abilities at once, each of which cost a Nimpo cell to perform, and these Nimpo cells are indicated here in green, these little green bars, and the max that you can get is 5. So by the end of the game, 5 is the max that you can get, To be honest, it's a pretty good number. It allows you to execute a ton of abilities if you can have all these charges filled up at once. And while we're on the topic of abilities, I'm going to give a little showcase of each one and explain what they do, as there aren't very many to collect, so I feel like it's worth taking the time to explore them. First up is the Kunai Burst Ninpo, which has Joe sling a burst of special kunai directly below him in an arc while he is in midair. And as you can see, the star system that I was mentioning previously, this ability deals 1 star damage to health, 1 star damage to armor, and 2 star damage to execution. And keep in mind that 3 stars is the maximum amount of damage that an ability can do. Next we have the Bomb Ninpo, which is another ability that Joe executes from midair. And personally, it's one of my favorites. It looks really cool, it feels really good to use. And it has a 2-star rating against armor, which is one of the most annoying things to deal with in this game. Then we have the Wind Slash Ninpo, another mid-air ability, and another one which I absolutely love. So I think we're starting to see a trend here. For me, I really just love being in the air, because if you're in the air, you're not getting hit by anything on the ground. And it's kind of nice. You execute an ability, it'll freeze time, execute it while you're still in the air, so you're not like executing the ability and then immediately falling back down. So these mid-air abilities are awesome, at least in my opinion. And the Wind Slash delivers a heavy slash from mid-air, and it deals damage up close and projects an energy wave at long range. Moving on to the Great Serpent Ninpo. As you can see, this ability has 3 stars across the board in terms of the damage it deals to health, armor, and execution meters. But on the flip side, this thing takes quite a bit of time to charge, so you are leaving yourself vulnerable if you do decide to pop this. And then we have Thunder Ninpo, which has Joe dash a moderate distance across the screen, and any enemies that are caught up within that dash pretty much just get sliced up by a bunch of blades. It's a really satisfying ability. And it has a 2-star rating when it comes to execution, so this is a decent option for building up those execution meters. Then we have the Shuriken Ninpo. This is essentially just exactly what it says. It's a giant shuriken that you throw out. It stays there for maybe like 3-4 seconds, and then it comes back to you, and it deals 2-star damage to armor. Joe also has an ability called Water Ninpo, which is essentially this game's parry. And if you feel like waiting for an enemy attack and you can catch him in this, it is a good ability. It does decent damage, but I just kind of like to fly by the seat of my pants. I don't want to stop for nothing because I'm juggling and I'm comboing, I'm doing ninja things. So I am actually not using the Water Ninpo in this game a lot, which is funny because I really do love to parry in Souls-likes. It's one of my favorite mechanics, but in this game I kind of just want to go in guns blazing and never stop. And last but not least is the Fire Ninpo ability, which turns our protagonist Joe Musashi into a fire-breathing dragon, and it does moderate damage when it comes to the health meter of enemies. Now, when it comes to equipment, there is pretty much no gear to speak of aside from 2 amulet slots that Joe gets. One of these amulet slots provide passive bonuses to the player, while the other one, the combo amulet slot, require the player to maintain a minimum combo hit counter in order to execute. In total, there are 12 passive and 10 combo amulets that you can equip, with 4 of the combo amulet options buffing your Kunai Burst, Bomb, Shuriken, and Fire Breath Ninpos, and 4 of the passive amulet options buffing Thunder, Water, Wind Slash, and Great Serpent Ninpos. The other 6 combo amulets that players can obtain include Power Booster, which increases your overall damage dealt and has a hit count requirement of 15. Berserker, which requires a hit count of 30, and this allows the player to hit harder with each successful attack once they hit that minimum hit requirement. Executioner requires a hit count of 20, and it allows the execution gauge to charge up quicker, which this is really good because the insta-kills in this game are really satisfying to pull off, one, and also pretty much the strongest ability that Joe has. And then there is Rage Regenerator, which has a hit count minimum requirement of 25, and it charges your rage gauge with each successful attack. And the rage gauge, when charged to full, allows our little ninja to essentially go Super Saiyan and execute one of a potential 4 supercharged abilities. One of the abilities gives you a shield to block attacks, The other one pretty much heals you for all of your health. A third option sees you incinerating all enemies visible on screen with flames. And the fourth superpowered ability allows you to deal massive damage to all enemies on screen, but at the expense of reducing your HP to critical levels. And for the last two combo amulets, we have Fortune Hoarder and Kunai Finder. And Fortune Hoarder, you have to have a hit count of 25, and you earn a gold coin with every hit once you reach that threshold. And in my opinion, this is one of the combo amulets that is just completely not worth using, as I've never had any issue with gold in this game. If you're clearing maps 100% the whole way through, by the time you get to the end of the game, you will have enough money to buy literally everything in the shop. So I suggest avoiding this one. And then Kunai Finder has a hit count threshold of 20, which you must reach, and this adds 1 kunai to your stock with every other hit. And this one's actually very good because the kunai is very strong in this game, especially on enemies who have no armor, just health. Kunai fills the execution meter like crazy. For the passive amulets, the other 8 options include Shield, which after 60 seconds of charge time, it creates a barrier that can block a single attack, and it recharges after each use. This one is not worth using in my opinion. This game is far too easy to be using a shield, when you can just go full aggro and absolutely demolish everything on screen, with style I might add. Then there is the Rage Channeler passive amulet, which fills the rage gauge faster, but it increases the damage received. But this amulet is especially good if you pair this with the combo amulet, the Rage Regenerator, which charges your rage gauge with each successful attack as long as your hit count is at a minimum threshold of 25. Another passive amulet that Joe can equip is Vampire, which allows him to steal health from enemies with each successful katana attack, but at the expense of enemies no longer dropping health orbs. This one is entirely not worth using, since execution is such a big part of this game, building up that execution meter and getting those insta-kills, which in turn give you those bonus rewards of more gold, more health, and more kunai refills. And I think the health that you get from those insta-kills far outclasses the health that you get from this vampiric passive, so avoid this. Next up is Armor Breaker, which has heavy attacks deal more damage to armor, which if enemies have armor, that's the one thing that's stopping you from juggling them. So the faster you can get that off, the faster you can start styling on them. So this passive is actually not a bad option. Moving along, we also have Nympho Expert, which allows Joe's Nympho cells to recharge at a faster rate. So if you love to pop abilities in this game and you want to pop more of them more often, this is also a great passive. The final 3 passives that you can acquire for Joe are Medic, which makes your healing more effective. Once again, avoid this. This game's too easy. Nobody cares about healing, deal damage, and kick ass. And the final 2 passives are first, Explosive Kunai, which will explode on impact but at 5 times the ammo cost, which is quite steep. And Piercing Kunai, which will go through more than one enemy but at twice the ammo cost. This is somewhat effective, but it's just not a very exciting passive to use in my opinion. So I avoided using this one as it is on the weaker end. With all that out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this game, which is its combo system.
This is getting fun! You guys, I think I almost a ninja! I almost a ninja! I almost a ninja!
When it comes to light attacks, Joe can string up to 4 light attacks together while on the ground and 3 in the air. Now this can be extended by mixing in some heavy attacks. For example, Joe can extend his 4 light attack combo string by adding in a heavy attack on the end. And then he can also further extend his combo, and this is the bread and butter of this game, is with the ninja flip. So the ninja flip is a move that you hit. It's the dodge ability. And if you execute it right after landing an attack, you will dodge past an enemy and then you can initiate another combo string. It essentially fully resets your combo, which is really nice. Now when it comes to launchers, Joe has 3 really good options. And by launchers, I mean moves that will get your enemy in the air so that you can juggle them and style on them. And the 3 moves that are really good for launching enemies are the dive kick. This was one of my favorite abilities. I literally could not stop using this ability. It is so good, as it does 2-star damage to armor, 2-star damage to execution, and by the end of it, if you do that spinning move at the end, it will launch the enemy up in the air and you can start your combo. Another really good option for getting enemies in the air is utilizing the launch kick, which can be executed if you perform a dodge and immediately hit heavy attack after. The sword dive, which has you smashing to the ground if you're in the air when you hit down Y, is also an effective option at bouncing enemies up, and it does great damage against armor. And of course, Joe's basic YY heavy attack will also launch enemies into the air. One of the most effective combos I found is to jump in the air, execute dive kick, and the spin that follows after. It'll bounce the enemy into the air. You have enough time to jump, and then you're going to want to perform an aerial slash into a rising strike. And then after you do this, you're going to perform another small jump forward and execute another aerial slash, but this time, instead of executing another rising strike, you're going to want to execute 2 more light attacks, which will have Joe kick the enemy back to the ground, and they'll be in the perfect position to perform another dive kick into the spin attack, and then, you can continue the combo however you want to, or you can cut it off with a little kunai burst at the end, which is what I like to do. Now, some of the other much simpler combos that I found effective are Cannon Punch Finisher, which can be performed by executing 3 light attacks followed by a heavy attack, or by performing 3 heavy attacks back to back. And this attack, along with Super Kick, are just very effective at knocking enemies off the sort of smash-like stages that some of these fights take place in. And they're also really effective at just knocking enemies into environmental hazards and insta-killing them. So I really like these options. And I also quickly add that even the basic YY, so the heavy attack combo, is really effective at knocking enemies off the map or into those hazards. Now, I've already talked about all the passive and combo amulets in a previous section of this video, but I want to do a little section that goes over what I think are the best amulet combos in the game. So first up, I think a really good combo is pairing the passive Explosive Kunai amulet with the combo Kunai Finder amulet. Since the Explosive Kunai takes 5 ammunition to actually execute, if you have Kunai Finder on, you hit that combo minimum, you're going to be getting Kunai back like crazy, so you're able to actually throw out more of those Explosive Kunai. Now, another really good combo I would recommend is getting Rage Channeler passive amulet and then combining that with the Rage Regenerator combo amulet. This is just going to give you a ton of rage regeneration, so instead of having one, if you have both on, you're going to be able to go Super Saiyan more often, so might as well pair these together. Another good combo is Armor Breaker passive amulet combined with the Berserker combo amulet. This is just a really good setup if you want to go pure aggro and just have high raw damage output. Now, another really good amulet combo I would suggest is the Nimpo Expert, which is the passive amulet, and then you combine that with Kunai Killer, which is the combo amulet. Now, these two don't necessarily go together, but I like it given that the Kunai Burst is great for triggering the insta-kills, and Nimpo Expert simply lets you do that more often. And then the final amulet combo that I'll talk about, this is a personal favorite of mine, is combining the Wind Sculptor passive amulet with the Demolitions Expert combo amulet. And the Wind Sculptor lets you throw out 2 Wind Slashes, and Demolitions Expert lets you throw out 2 bombs. So I really just like this when you're going full aggro. The bombs are great for armor, and the Wind Slash is great for just clearing screens of enemies because it goes through the entire map. With all the combat mechanics covered, let's talk about the things that hold this game back and hurt its tactical competency rating. The first thing that holds this game back is that there's simply not enough combos to pull off. It feels like a decent moveset initially, but it really starts to feel limiting the more you play the game. And I think it gets exacerbated by the fact that you'll be facing pretty much the same enemy types all game long, with the few new ones introduced feeling absolutely terrible to fight. Straight up just fuck those flying horse heads. And this naturally leads into the other negative, is that there's not enough enemy variety. which means the player can pretty much implement the same strategies that they used successfully before, and there's no incentive to experiment. Which leads me to the next negative, is that Shinobi the Art of Vengeance is simply far too easy. You could legitimately get through all of the content in this game by mashing heavy and light attacks with no problem at all. Though obviously this game would not be nearly as fun as it is if you did play it that way. In my opinion, Shinobi essentially makes it the player's job to care enough to pull off those longer and more stylish combos, since the lack of enemy variety, a somewhat limited moveset, and low difficulty doesn't give the player very much incentive to get creative with the combat. And I found it funny because Shinobi actually has a customizable difficulty option where you can alter the enemy health, their damage, etc., but you're only able to make the game easier, not harder, which was a strange decision in my opinion. I don't understand why they couldn't just have added harder difficulty options. I've collected the evidence and I've done my best to defend Shinobi the Art of Vengeance combat system. Let's pass it over to Judge Verdict to see what he has to say.
Greetings, members of the court. The evidence has been submitted in defense of Shinobi the Art of Vengeance's tactical veracity, and regardless of rating, I think we can all agree that now we are indeed finally ninja. Itadakimasu. Oh, pardon me, it seems I have a little something caught in my giblets there. The time has come for a verdict. It is true that Shinobi the Art of Vengeance features a decently competent combat system, given the crisp animation and player feedback. However, the game's short playtime, coupled with a limited combo moveset, the lack of new enemy types towards the latter half of the game, and the difficulty never reaching a true consistent level of challenge, do indeed hurt this game's tactical competency rating. But let it be known that while I believe Shinobi the Art of Vengeance is a fantastic game as a whole package, on this channel, games live or die by the sword, the gavel, based solely on the proficiency of their combat systems. And so I declare, and with a heavy heart I must admit, Shinobi the Art of Vengeance to be tactically meek. Officer Ramirez, keep those cuffs warm, for I can see our defendant is trying to parkour out of here. But there will be no ninja flips in my courtroom, Joe Jabroni. It is combat jail for you, Shinobi. I say, my friends, justice has been served today. And with that, court is adjourned.
Oh, yes, I did. I took down Chow. I finally ninja. I got to chop, chop, chop Chow down. Take Chow down to Chinatown.